HOA forced me to sell my house, here's how it happened. The dream home. The day Sarah and I found 42 Sycamore Lane was perfect, a pristine colonial with white siding and blue shutters that instantly felt like home. After 18 months of house hunting, we were ecstatic. The Willowbrook community is one of the most desirable in the county, our realtor Denise explained. And the HOA is very reasonable, just $275 monthly for community amenities. Basic rules to maintain aesthetics, nothing outrageous. 3 weeks later, we closed on the house. I signed the stack of HOA documents without reading more than the summary pages. They seemed standard: restrictions on paint colors, guidelines for decorations, rules about lawn maintenance. Nothing concerning. If only I had known how those unread pages would eventually cost us everything. The first few years. The first 2 years were wonderful. We painted, planted a garden, and made friends with neighbors. The HOA seemed reasonable, just as promised. Quarterly meetings were cordial, and the board consisted of 5 members led by Richard Harmon, a retired attorney. We rarely noticed the HOA's presence beyond occasional emails about trash bins or upcoming events. Once, we received a note asking us to move our dog Cooper's house so it wasn't visible from the street, which we did without complaint. Everything changed in our 3rd year when Richard stepped down due to health concerns. His seat was filled by Evelyn Trask, who had moved to Willowbrook just 6 months earlier from a luxury community in Connecticut. The first indication of change came via certified letter informing residents of monthly property inspections and a new, 3-strike, violation system with increased fines. 3 days later, I met Evelyn as she photographed our house. Just documenting compliance status, she explained without smiling. You'll be receiving a courtesy notice about several issues. The notice listed 7 violations, including our mailbox being the wrong shade of black, bushes exceeding maximum height by 8 inches, and our American flag being mounted incorrectly. We had 14 days to correct everything or face fines. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn's influence spread. The HOA increased monthly dues by 40% for community enhancement projects and instituted numerous new rules. At the quarterly meeting, when homeowners raised concerns, Evelyn dismissed them with surprising condescension. If maintaining a certain standard is financially challenging for some residents, she said, perhaps Willowbrook isn't the right community for them. The escalation. Over the next 6 months, the situation deteriorated. New rules appeared constantly. Holiday decorations could only be displayed for 10 days before and after holidays. Basketball hoops had to be stored out of sight when not in use. Only certain flower breeds were permitted in front yards. Fines accumulated quickly. The Patels received a $250 penalty because their son's car was parked in their driveway while home from college. An elderly woman was fined $500 for having unauthorized wind chimes. When Sarah became pregnant after years of trying, I built a white picket fence around a section of our backyard to create a safe play area for our future child. The next day, I received an email demanding I remove this unauthorized structure immediately or face $100 daily fines. I submitted a retroactive application that was denied without explanation by the Architectural Review Committee, now headed by Evelyn. My appeal was rejected, and the fines continued accumulating. The battle. I reached out to other frustrated homeowners, forming Willowbrook United. Our first meeting attracted 15 neighbors with similar stories of excessive fines and arbitrary enforcement. We documented everything, attended every HOA meeting en masse, and researched legal options. We discovered several board actions potentially violated state HOA regulations. At the next meeting, Evelyn and the board unanimously rejected all our requests for transparency and reasonable accommodation. The message was clear: they weren't interested in compromise. The personal cost. As our battle intensified, so did the pressure on my family. The daily fence fine had grown to over $5,000, and we'd received new violations for everything from an unapproved doormat to excessive pet activity in our yard. Sarah, now 4 months pregnant, was struggling with severe morning sickness. Her doctor advised minimizing stress, but that became impossible when we received notice that the HOA was placing a lien on our house for unpaid fines, now exceeding $7,500. That night, Sarah experienced spotting and cramping. At the emergency room, doctors confirmed everything was stable but warned her blood pressure was dangerously high. As I watched her sleeping in the hospital bed, I decided the fight wasn't worth risking my family's health. #legal battles. With Sarah on bed rest, I hired Patricia Winters, an attorney specializing in HOA disputes. She confirmed the board had overstepped in several areas but warned that fighting could take years with no guarantee of success. We filed for an emergency injunction against the lien and requested mediation. The HOA's response was harsh. They would consider dropping some fines if we removed the fence immediately, paid the remaining balance, and signed an agreement never to challenge any HOA decision again. Meanwhile, our homeowners group discovered disturbing connections. Evelyn had previously been involved in similar HOA takeovers in other communities. Thomas Weber, who owned multiple Willowbrook properties, was Evelyn's cousin. Other board members had business connections to Evelyn's husband's real estate development company. "This looks like a deliberate strategy," Patricia said. "Force out existing homeowners through excessive enforcement, acquire properties below market value, then flip them once the community enhancements are complete." We filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Authority, but bureaucratic wheels turned slowly. #the breaking point. 6 weeks later, Sarah was hospitalized with preeclampsia at just 28 weeks pregnant. While I divided my time between the hospital and dealing with the HOA situation, I found a notice on our door: foreclosure proceedings had begun. According to their documentation, we now owed over $15,000. That evening, I had the hardest conversation of my life with Sarah. "We need to sell the house before they foreclose. It's the only way to protect our credit and salvage some equity." Tears slid down her cheeks. "But it's our home. Where we were going to raise our baby. You and the baby are what matter most. We can find another house. One without an HOA." Hours later, doctors performed an emergency C-section. Our daughter, Emma, was born 12 weeks premature, weighing just over 2 pounds. As she fought for life in the NICU, our dream home was listed for a quick sale. #the forced sale. Selling with an active lien proved nearly impossible. Most buyers backed out upon learning of the HOA situation, and our agent advised drastically reducing the price. The first offer came at $295,000 from Willowbrook Investments, registered to Thomas Weber's wife, $90,000 below market value. I declined, but as Emma remained in the NICU and legal fees mounted, our options dwindled. Finally, a cash offer came in at $310,000 from an out-of-state investor. After paying our mortgage, the lien, and legal costs, we walked away with less than $40,000, barely enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on a modest apartment. On our final day at Sycamore Lane, I removed one small item I'd intentionally left until last: a brass plaque beside our front step that read, "The Crawfords, EST 2020. It wasn't much, but it was coming with us. #the aftermath. Emma spent 63 days in the NICU before coming home to our apartment. Despite her early arrival, she proved to be a fighter. A year after our forced sale, the state investigation concluded, finding substantial evidence of wrongdoing. Evelyn and 3 board members faced civil charges for conflicts of interest and abuse of power. A victim compensation fund was established, though our reimbursement, $15,000, barely covered a fraction of our losses. #moving forward. Today, Emma is a healthy 2-year-old. Sarah and I have rebuilt our savings and recently qualified for a mortgage again. We're looking exclusively at neighborhoods without HOAs. The new Willowbrook board has rolled back many excessive rules, and property values are stabilizing after what residents call the Trask era. Willowbrook Investments is under investigation for real estate fraud. Sometimes I drive past our old house. The fence I built is gone, replaced by a stone patio. The blue shutters are now gray, and Sarah's garden has been replaced with professional landscaping. It looks perfect but somehow soulless. Recently, Sarah surprised me by asking to stop as we drove by. We parked across the street as Emma toddled between us on the sidewalk. "I've been holding on to so much anger," Sarah admitted. "But look at us now. We have Emma. We're healthy. We're together. That house was just a building. Our home is wherever we are as a family." Next week, we're closing on a modest ranch house with no HOA in sight, just a simple neighborhood association that organizes block parties and welcomes new residents with cookies rather than rulebooks. The brass plaque that once marked our first home will find a new place at the entrance of this house. Only now it will read, "The Crawfords, EST 2020. Rebuilt 2025. Because that's the true story of what happened when our HOA forced us to sell our house. We lost a building but found something more valuable, the knowledge that home isn't defined by an address. It's defined by the people who share their lives together and the love that no covenant or restriction can ever regulate away. ## Lessons learned. 1. Read every page, never skim HOA documents. Fine print clauses about enforcement powers can become weapons. 2. Research the board. Before buying, attend an HOA meeting and ask neighbors about the board's reputation. 3. Understand your rights. State laws often limit HOA powers, but you need to know these protections exist. 4th, build community. Strong neighbor relationships create resilience against abusive boards. 5. Document everything. Keep meticulous records of all communications and violations. 6. Know when to walk away. Sometimes walking away, though painful, is the wisest choice when your family's well-being is at stake.